So you want to be a super host but don't know where to start. Welcome to part 8 of my 10-part Airbnb Superhost series. I'm so excited to have you here and I'm so excited to share my tips today with you. I'm Juls, I'm the Firefly. Welcome to my world. Secret number 1, boundary lines. This is really important as a host to set boundaries, because if you don't, it can really wear you down. I love my guests, they're amazing, and I would move heaven and earth, and I pretty much did, to make sure that they were happy and they were comfortable, and I wanted to accommodate them as much as I could. But it can come at a price, and I found that with a couple of things. Guests often want to check in early or check out late, or they want to leave their luggage at your Airbnb. I get it. We all ask for an early check-in or a late check-out, and that's fine. But sometimes people don't listen, and what happens is you're trying to make it work. So okay, you've had a guest check out at 10 a.m, you got your next guest is coming at 2, but they contact you and they say, hey Jules, I want to check in at 12:30. And you go, oh, okay, it's really important that, okay, you can drop your luggage off, but it's really important you just drop your luggage off and go back out and come back at 2 p.m. when it's check-in time. Do you know that often people don't hear that? And they will arrive at 12:30 and they'll just stay, and then your cleaner will turn up and go, hello, oh no, it's all right, we've checked in early, and it just creates all sorts of drama. So my advice and what I did, because it sort of happened one too many times, I ended up finding a couple of luggage storage places, and I recommended those places to my guests. So I had them in my apartment manual, the links to where people could store their luggage. In my welcome message, I would put down, in my message, if you need to store your luggage somewhere. That worked a treat. I set boundaries and I stuck to them. So that was really important to do that, for my sanity as much as anything. Also, people will want to meet you and they will want to have coffee or a wine, or they just want to meet on arrival. Now, that isn't what I wanted with my Airbnb, but of course in the beginning I tried to accommodate. So I would go into the apartment and I would go out for a drink with them, and it just wasn't working for me. It was time consuming, and that's not what I wanted. So you really need to ask yourself, is that what you want? Who am I doing this for? Me or the guests? Some people love to meet and greet. Some people love going out and having a drink with someone. I just didn't want that. So I made sure that I had in my Airbnb advert self-check-in. People knew I wasn't there to meet them. When guests did ask me to come and meet me for a drink, a coffee, a wine, I just said, look, I'm busy, I'm not around. And often I wasn't in town, or I was just not available. People get it. So as long as you set boundaries, you'll be fine. So that is secret number 1, setting boundaries. Secret number 2, the house rules. It's really important to have a set of house rules and for people to know what they can and they can't do. For me, some of my rules were no pets, respect the neighbours, no parties, please leave the apartment as you found it, turn the lights and the heating or the air conditioning off when you leave. Simple things like that, because it was really important for me, for my guests to understand how my Airbnb worked. I had wonderful neighbours in my apartment block. I didn't want them to be disturbed. That was really important for me. So I set the rules, people knew where they stood, put it in your welcome message. Generally, that sort of thing, you can already state that in your Airbnb when you set up your listing. So just think about what's going to work for you, because by setting the rules, you know where you stand and your guests will know where they stand, and they will love that. If you're clear and direct in what you're saying, people will respond accordingly. I never had any problems with my rules. So that's secret number 2, the house rules. Secret number 3, a comprehensive Airbnb manual. Do you know how many times I've stayed at an Airbnb where there's no manual or just a one-pager or just general information? That's fine, but I want to know how to turn the TV on, how to use the different remotes. I want to know how to use a washing machine. How does a dishwasher work? These are really important things. Now you need to think, if you're somebody like my husband who can just rock up somewhere and work things out really quickly, great, he doesn't need an apartment manual. But for a lot of us, we need to know how to work things. I'd really appreciate if I have some steps on how to turn the TV on, and then if I want to watch, say they have Netflix or how does that work? I don't know how to do that, or turn the stereo on. So what I did, I took my time and I put together a comprehensive manual, Airbnb manual, that had everything that opened and closed and how to do it. Even down to, I had double glazing, and it was actually a little bit finicky on how to open the double glazing. So I went through step by step on how to do that. People were so appreciative. They were so grateful. So some of the things I put in my Airbnb manual were things like how to access the balcony, how to use the appliances like the coffee machine, the stereo, the TV, how to change it to Netflix, where all the supplies were, where the earplugs were, where the taxi rank was, where the local supermarket is, where the transport is, where to go out in Melbourne, the house rules, everything. Great restaurants to go to, popular restaurants. I put everything in that manual, in that apartment manual. And it was absolute gold because so many people loved that I was so thorough. So that's secret number 3. Provide a comprehensive Airbnb manual. Just to recap today, secret number 1, set boundaries. Things like check-in and check-out, the luggage storage. Make it work for you. Secret number 2, the house rules. Set your house rules for your guests so they know the behaviour that you want for your Airbnb and what's acceptable and what's not. And secret number 3, the Airbnb manual. Make it comprehensive and it will be fabulous and give you great reviews and keep you in that superhost status. So you know the drill by now. If you have questions or queries, please put them in the description box along with your stories. I want to hear all. And we are up to part 9 of our 10-part Airbnb series. It's very exciting. And of course, it would be remiss of me not to mention my fabulous Airbnb book that is coming out in March of 2022, which is going to go over all of what I talk about in my 10-part Airbnb series. More on my book coming up. So I will meet you over for part 9 of my Airbnb Superhost series. I'm Jules, I'm the Firefly. Secret number 2, the house rules. It's really important to have a clear guideline for your guests on what they can and what they can't do. It was really important for me to have the guests understand what was okay and what was not okay. So some of my rules were no pets, no parties, please respect my neighbours. I had a no child policy purely because I had a balcony. People will love it if they know where they stand. So by setting these rules, people understood, okay, no pets. Now, I had a 1-bedroom apartment in the city of Melbourne. It's not going to be conducive to have a pet. And I didn't want pets in my apartment. It's as simple as that. Different if I had a country property or a beachside property. You know, you can take your pets to these places. I mean, I've got a dog, Baxter, and I will often stay at places where I can take him, and that's great. So people are going to have different rules, but it's really important to set the ground rules because people like to know where they stand and they will love it. If you say you can do this, you can't do that. So that's secret number 2, the house rules. Have a copy in your Airbnb manual. Put it on the Airbnb website so people understand how you have your Airbnb. Trust me, they'll love it. And I never had a problem with any of my guests. Not one problem with a guest with regards to the house rules. So that's secret number 2. My first secret for today is boundary lines. It's really important as a host to have boundaries between you and your guests, because if you don't, it will really start to drive you crazy and it can make you go a bit demented. When I first started out, I wanted to accommodate all my guests as best I could, and I pretty much achieved that. But it did wear me down because when you try to please everyone and you don't set boundaries, the lines become blurred and it doesn't work. You become exhausted, pissed off, angry, frustrated, stressed, worried, all of those things. And I can attest to that because that's what happened to me. So what I learned was to create boundaries. One of the challenges with boundaries I found was the early check-ins, the late check-outs, and the storing luggage. Now, when I started Airbnb, I wanted to please everyone as best I could. And I pretty much did. But it did get complicated because I didn't set boundaries in the early days. So I would try and please everyone. I'd say, somebody would say, can I check in early? Check-in's 2 o'clock, but they might arrive into town at, say, 12 o'clock or 12:30. So I'd think, okay, I'll try and accommodate this person, or, they'd want to drop their luggage off into the apartment at, say, 1 o'clock and then come back at 2 o'clock for check-in. Or they'd want to check out, is it 10 a.m. and they'd want to check out at 2 p.m. or, 12:30 or p.m. So this sounds fine, but it got complicated very quickly because people often don't listen to what you're saying, and you might say, all right, you can drop your bags off at 12:30 and then come back at 2 o'clock after the cleaner's been. And what often happens is they'll just arrive and they'll put their stuff down and they'll plonk themselves down at 12:30. Or on the other end of the spectrum is, if I didn't have anybody coming that night or that day after the current checkout, I'd say, okay, you can check out a couple of hours later. Or even if there was someone checking in at 2, I'd say, all right, well, you can leave your bags, make sure they're packed so my cleaner can clean around your stuff. But you have to be gone by XYZ. Well, my cleaner would turn up and they'd just still be sitting there, the guests, or they just would have left their luggage just strewn about. So they hadn't quite listened to what I was saying. So I decided to set some boundaries. And what I did, I provided guests with links to luggage storage places. And luggage storage places are quite reasonable. Some places are like $10. So I found that was easy to outlay that in the beginning, send that information to my guests in their welcome message, and it would also be in my house manual, which I will be discussing later. So once I incorporated the luggage storage options, people responded to that, and I became a lot more assertive in, no, that is not going to work for me, Jules, because you need it to work for you as well. So just be aware that if you don't set boundaries, it can get very complicated and the lines can get blurred. I also found I had to set boundaries with meeting guests. Some guests will want to meet you when they first arrive. Some guests will say, hey, let's catch up for a coffee, love to meet you, let's catch up for a wine. In the early days, I did accommodate that, not because I wanted to do it, but I felt like I had to do it. So there's a difference. My ideal was to not meet anyone, and that's why I had a electronic check-in keypad. So I could send the guests the code to get in. I didn't have to meet them. They could let themselves in. I wasn't available a lot of the time to meet people. But I did in the beginning, and I found it wasn't working for me. That's not what I wanted. That wasn't the idea of why I was doing Airbnb. So I stated that in my advert. I won't be available to meet you on arrival. It's self-check-in. And that worked brilliantly. And also, if you do have the odd guest, because I did have the odd guest who really, really wanted to meet me, and I just said, I'm sorry, I'm not available, I'm not in town, I'm not able to come in to meet. So people understand, you just have to set boundaries. So that is secret number one. Set boundaries with your guests.